So here the first thing is like we have specified the actions here, and the second thing is the reducer. So now let's try to consider a scenario where you are having a centralized database. So the name of the centralized database is store. So you need to perform some action and the data will be stored in your centralized database. So the actions we are having here like increment and decrement, and we cannot directly perform the action onto the centralized database. So we are taking the help of a reducer here. So the reducer will consider our actions and will perform the operation using the actions which we have specified, and the resultant data is stored in our centralized database, that is store here. And now we are trying to make use of the data in the store. So we are provided a store provider here so that we can provide the data throughout our application, and we have specified it in the root level. And now we are making use of a store connector to fetch the data and also to perform the actions. Also we are making use of a store connector here. So here you can find the difference. We are making use of a void callback and string to perform the respective task. So these are the key components which we have used here, like reducer, actions, store provider and store connector. In this vlog, we would like to deal with the implementation of Redux and application data flow architecture in our Flutter application. So now we will be seeing the concept of Redux in a very easy example. So we will be considering a simple example in this vlog, and I will try to explain you the Redux concept instead of an oral explanation. So now the first prerequisite is we need to add the dependency here. So Flutter Redux, so the current version is 0.8.2. You may update the version according to the latest available. So now the first thing is like we try to import the dependencies before getting started. So the first thing is like I'm going to import material.dart, and the second one is Flutter Redux.dart here, and the third one is Redux.dart. So these are the three imports which we will be consuming in this particular tutorial. So the very first step is we are going to specify the actions. So what are all the actions we would like to perform here? So as I said earlier, I want to specify a simple example to explain the concept of Redux. Even though it may be a simple example, but I'm sure that by the end of this tutorial you will be having a very good knowledge on the Redux implementation in Flutter application. So stay tuned till the end of the tutorial. So the first thing is I'm going to specify the enumerator, so by using which I'm going to specify the actions here. So the actions are like increment and decrement. And the second thing is I'm going to specify a reducer here. So int counter reducer, and let's try to specify result, or let us say it to be a count here, which will be much easier to understand. And the second parameter is action. And now we need to return count here. So we need to return, whenever we try to make use of the reducer here, we'll try to perform the increment and decrement, and finally we'll try to return the result here. So now before returning the count here, we need to check for the action here. So if action double equal to actions dot increment here, So then you need to increment the count, or else. So now let's try to increment the count here, and else if action double equal to actions dot decrement here, so then you need to decrement the count, return count minus 1. So yes, these are the actions here, and finally you need to return the count here. So it may be increment or decrement, you need to finally return the count here. And now let's try to specify our void main, and within the void main we need to specify our store here. So final store equal to store of type int here. So we are just making use of the increment and decrement, so the final data which we are having is of a type integer, so we are considering int here. And let's specify the counter reducer, and let's specify the initial state to be 0 here. So the counter we are starting from 0, so we are specifying the initial state to be 0 here. And now the next step is like specify run app here, and within the run app I am going to specify my app here, and this my app will be having store. So we are passing the store parameter here. So basically what is a store here? Store is a centralized database where we are having our data. So let us consider our data is of a type integer and is 0 here as we have specified. So whenever you try to make an increment, our data is 1, and whenever you try to decrement, it will be again back to 0. This 0 or 1 will be stored in our store. So it is a centralized database. So by making use of a counter reducer, we are performing the actions increment and decrement here. So now let's try to see the complete tutorial so that you will get good clarity here. So now let's specify the stateless class my app, and this my app will be having a final store variable here. So store of type int here, and we need to add this to our constructor as well. This dot store. So let us make it to be a named parameter so that we don't have any confusion whenever we are trying to pass this, and let's make this required. So now let's start with the declaration of store provider here. So now instead of container we will be specifying store provider here, and the basic use of the store provider is to provide the data throughout the class here. So we are providing the state provider as a root. So here we have passed the store value to the store here, and in the child we are going to specify material app. So I think you know understood why we have provided store provider over material app. So the material app is a root widget, and that root widget is being added to the store provider so that the complete root widget will have the access to the centralized database that is store here. So now within the material app, let us specify home to be scaffold, and within the scaffold let's specify the app bar, and within the app bar let's specify the title with the help of a text widget, and I'm just going to specify it like Redux example. And now let's try to specify the body here, and for the body section I'm just going to consider a column here because I'm having multiple widgets here, so we need to cover all the widgets. So I'm specifying the multi-child widget, that is column, and I have provided children. So now we need to display the data, and also we need to have two buttons. One is for incrementing and the other is for decrementing. So now let's make use of a store connector here, and with the help of a store connector we need to specify the type here. So int comma string, and now for the builder you need to specify context and comma, let's specify count here so that it will be easy for us to understand. And now let's try to return a widget. So let's consider a text widget so that we can easily display data here. So count is, and let's try to specify the count variable here. So now we are able to display the data, but we need to fetch the count, right? So now within the converter let's specify store here, and so from our centralized database, that is store, we are fetching the current state. So the data here dot to string. So it might be confusing for you what I am typing here. I am continuously typing and you might think you are getting some doubts here. So don't worry, I will explain you here clearly. So with the help of a store connector, we are trying to connect to our centralized database, which I have said earlier, like store, and from there we are trying to fetch the data here. So here in this step you can see from store we are trying to fetch the state here. So what is state? So returns the current state of the app here. So the current state of the app is like we are having only one value over there, that is of a type integer value, and we are trying to fetch the current value here to string here. And with the help of the builder we are trying to display the same onto the text widget now. So this is the process of fetching the data from the store, and before fetching the data we need to have the two buttons as well. So like we need to increment and decrement, right? So let's make use of a store connector again, and now this time we will be making use of int comma void callback so that we can perform the actions which we have specified. So within the builder let's specify context again, and this time we'll be having a callback. And now previously we have used a text widget to display the data, but now what we need to do to increment and decrement? Any guess? So yes, some of you might have guessed it correctly. We need to have a button. So let's return a text button here, add a return before this. So we need to have a text button which have on press here. So for the on press I am going to specify callback directly, and for the child widget we need to specify some text, right? So I am going to specify some text like increment so that it will be easy for us to understand. And yeah, it's string, right? So we need to provide it in a proper format. And now for the converter here you need to specify store here, and then you need to return store dot dispatch this time. So you need to make the action perform, right? So you need to perform it in this way, actions dot. So whenever you are trying to specify actions here, there you can find decrement and increment. So these are the two actions which we have specified here with the help of an enumerator. So now let's specify increment here, and for the decrement we will be trying to specify the action to be decrement here. So now to make it much quick, let's try to copy and paste this button again so that we need not type everything again. So almost everything is same, but you need to change the text here to decrement and also the action here. So only these two are the changes, and also you can just make them like constant here. So add constant modifier. And now let's try to recall what are the things we have done before trying to see the output. So here the first thing is like we have specified the actions here, and the second thing is the reducer. So now let's try to consider a scenario where you are having a centralized database. So the name of the centralized database is store. So you need to perform some action and the data will be stored in your centralized database. So the actions we are having here like increment and decrement, and we cannot directly perform the action onto the centralized database. So we are taking the help of a reducer here. So the reducer will consider our actions and will perform the operation using the actions which we have specified, and the resultant data is stored in our centralized database, that is store here. And now we are trying to make use of the data in the store. So we are provided a store provider here so that we can provide the data throughout our application, and we have specified it in the root level. And now we are making use of a store connector to fetch the data and also to perform the actions. Also we are making use of a store connector here. So here you can find the difference. We are making use of a void callback and string to perform the respective task. So these are the key components which we have used here, like reducer, actions, store provider and store connector. So I think you have understood the concept of Redux with this simple example. And even if you might have any doubts, so do let us know in the comment section below. I will surely try to help you. To make it much easier for you, I have just considered this simple example, though if I try to explain you orally, you might understood it, but doing it practically will help us understand it much better, right? So now let's try to run this code and see the output once. So here you can see we have got the text widget count at the top. So all these things are to the top here. So now let's try to wrap them to the center by making use of this widget, and also to the column main axis alignment, and let's the main axis alignment to be center. So yes, now we have got them to center of the screen here. And now let's try to increment it. So yes, we can increment the count here, and also we can decrement the count here, and also make sure you add a validation here. So this is a task or an assignment for you. So whenever you try to decrement here, it will go to minus values even. So let's try to add a validation in the actions here. So here we have specified the actions, right? So try to add a validation over here. And yes, that's it for this tutorial, and I will be providing the complete code for this tutorial in the description section below. And as I have said earlier, if you are having any queries in this particular tutorial, do let me know in the comment section below. And for more interesting tutorials on Flutter, do like, share and subscribe to our channel.